Hey all, welcome back. As always, on Saturdays, I'm here to talk about an episode of an animated superhero series. Today, I am talking about the Season 2 premiere of Batman Beyond, titled Splicers. If you haven't seen the episode before, and you don't want to be spoiled, then leave now and rectify that sad fact now before you watch the rest of this review. And if you don't care about spoilers, then you're in luck because I'm going to summarize the episode before I get into the nitty-gritty of the spoilers. There's a new fad hitting Gotham City, and presumably the rest of the world, called splicing. Essentially, you take an animal DNA and splice it into your own, turning you into some sort of were-something. The youths of Gotham are all for it in typical rebellious youthiness, while many of the adults, such as Bruce Wayne privately and District Attorney Sam Young publicly, are adamantly against it. Sam Young specifically says that splicing tends to turn the subjects into more aggressive creatures, and as if on cue, two spliced punks start making speeches and throwing trash cans in the subway car that Terry McGinnis is on. After Terry makes short work of them, they go on to the doctor who is heading up the splicing program, which is exactly where Dana and Terry are visiting because Dana is at least mildly interested in splicing herself. Terry eavesdrops on the doctor and the punks and finds out that in order to fight for their right to keep splicing, they are planning to assassinate D.A. Young. Before Batman can do anything, he is captured, and the doctor splices bat DNA into Terry. Terry is still able to stop the punks from killing the D.A., then in a blind rage, he makes it back to the Batcave where he attempts to attack Bruce and Ace the Bat-Hound. Bruce was conveniently working on a cure for the splicing and cures Terry. Terry and Ace then track down the doctor and his henchmen, and a fight ensues, but justice wins out at the end of the day, and Commissioner Barbara Gordon and Terry have a discussion. Cue credits. This is one of the more well-remembered episodes of the series, and rightly so. Often, when a series or a story is set in the future, it will make these wild, far-fetched guesses about what the future is going to be like, then in the actual future, we make fun of just how wrong they were. What the people behind Batman Beyond did here is a little different. I'm not saying that they were right, and that in 20 years we're going to have half humans, half snakes running around, but what the people behind this show did, that I feel many other storytellers fail to do, is that they extrapolated from the present day and tried to figure out what the future might look like just based on the current trends at the time. And then they also added a healthy dose of over-the-top superhero-y science fiction. As James Tucker said in a commentary for this episode, at the time that this episode was being put together, everyone was getting piercings and tattoos, and someone said, what would that be like in the future? And thus splicing. But that's also kinda where I have a bit of a problem with this episode. Not a huge problem, but a minor one. While this episode does have a touch of realism to it, in that the splicing phenomenon does remind me so much of the people who constantly are modifying their bodies with tattoos or piercings, the key difference between splicing and other forms of body modification is that in the real world, body modification is not dangerous or on the verge of being outlawed. You might have old folks who are wildly against tattoos, and they will instantly think less of someone who has a tattoo. In fact, I know people who are like that. But glaring disapproval is where it begins and ends. With this episode, because the people behind this series chose to make an entire episode out of this concept, they had to have some way to conclude the episode. So not only is splicing controversial, but it's also dangerous to the people splicing themselves, and it's dangerous to the norms, as they are called, who are looked down upon by the people who are getting spliced. There really couldn't be much of an episode here if splicing wasn't dangerous to everyone. If it was just as dangerous as getting your ear pierced or tattooing eternal strength on your arm, then people like Sam Young and even Batman by episode's end would come off looking like enormous jackwagons for fighting against this new fad for no real reason at all. And so, where the concept of splicing begins feeling very realistic, since it is rooted in real-world fads of the 1990s and even today, it loses that realism when it tries to make this into a life-or-death scenario, which body modification never really is in the real world. Something interesting to note about this episode is that it's the first time that we get to see Max, who later becomes sort of a sidekick to Batman later on in the series. Though just seeing her in this episode, you wouldn't necessarily know that she becomes very important later on. In fact, here, she seems about as important as Chelsea or Nelson, but still it's interesting to see her for the first time. One thing that I never noticed until I listened to the commentary of this episode is still something worth bringing up. In the commentary, Bruce Timm mentioned that Terry can stop two of the Splicer guys in the train car when he's out of costume, but then later on, he has trouble with them when he's got the batsuit on. And then later still, when he has the cure, he's able to get the drop on 3 of these guys long enough to cure them, even though he got his butt kicked severely earlier in the episode when he was fighting them. I guess you could say that they got a power boost from the Doctor when we see the Doctor injecting them with something. But Terry's suit would have also given him a little bit of a boost, so it makes very little sense that they trashed him so much. But it's understandable, as if this wasn't really an issue in the episode, the plot wouldn't be able to happen in the way that it needs to in order for the episode to conclude. Also, something I'm considerably less forgiving about is the fact that the evil doctor gives extra superpowers to Batman, the one guy trying to stop him from assassinating the DA, again just so that the plot can happen. Except that the plot really wouldn't be changed all that much if you remove this weird scene of Batman getting spliced by the doctor guy. I get why it's here, I do. It's here to act as a throwback to the episode On Leather Wings, which introduced Man-Bat and introduced us to the DC animated universe as a whole. And also, oh, the irony, he dresses up as a bat. So, in an episode where humans are actually merging their DNA with animal DNA, why not do that with Batman? I get it. But still, it really is ultra super contrived that the bad guy is actually making Batman stronger, which then results in Batman being able to escape from his bonds and is then able to go and thwart the assassination attempt on Sam Young. This makes me realize that the doctor yelling at his henchmen for failing to kill the DA is really kinda harsh, considering it's his own fault for allowing Batman to escape and thwart the attempt in the first place. And speaking of weird plot holes / plot problems, somehow Ace is able to sniff the doctor's claw that was in Batman's suit after he got in a scuffle with the doctor, and then track him down across the entire city? Does Ace have superpowers or something? Any dog with sniffing abilities like that could sniff out its prey across a field or a forest, but a city with thousands of smells that would get in the way, plus the sheer size of the city itself, makes this seem a little bit absurd. But if the episode didn't indulge in this insanity, then it would be struggling to find a way to end the episode without something stupid like, the doctor told me where his secret hideout was before I escaped. This episode kinda has the exact same ending as The Winning Edge. At least in that episode, it didn't quite seem like Terry was deliberately ruining a dude's life. In the heat of battle, the opponent gets thrown down on a pile of slappers, and the substance which he was pushing on others, ironically, is the end of him, just like it is in this episode. But in this episode, Terry has much more agency in turning the villain into a grotesquerie, which just doesn't sit well with me. Batman has a very outspoken rule against flat-out murder, and a more unspoken rule about extreme violence against enemies. For instance, Batman might break a dude's rib in a fight if the dude is trying to rob a liquor store, but Batman is not going to break a criminal's legs just because he's a repeat offender. There's a certain line that he doesn't cross. And here, it almost feels like Terry does cross that line. Now, it's hard for me to put this into better words since it's so hard to describe what is and is not okay for Batman to do. And this action is made slightly better by the fact that, again, it was in the heat of battle. Terry really had no way to get free of the grip of the doctor, and so he stabbed him with the chemicals. But still, it feels much more cold-blooded here than it did in The Winning Edge. I mentioned in my review for the episode A Touch of Curare that it seemed a little easy that Barbara was so anti-Batman and then suddenly was okay with him because he had saved her husband's life a couple of times. And I'm very glad to see that even though Barbara is not going to send the entire Gotham PD to take down Batman, she still isn't 100% okay with Terry doing what he's doing. And while that's good, I can't shake this feeling that this is the last time that we will see any mention of Barbara's resentment of Terry taking on the mantle of Batman, or Bruce continuing his tradition of training youths to fight his battles for him, as she might put it herself. It would have been nice if Barbara could have had this really extended character arc throughout the entire series. When we first see her, she is telling Terry that if she sees pointy ears again, she's going to arrest him. Then we get to here where she isn't going to arrest him, but she is still encouraging Terry to give up the crime fighting. And then maybe by the end of the series, she's even ready to reinstate the bat signal or something kinda like that. Something like that could be really interesting to see over time, and doubly so in a cartoon that so very rarely indulges in continuity like that. But like I said, I just don't see the series picking up this small tidbit again, which is a shame. And that's all I have to say on this episode, guys. I hope you guys liked the episode, as I know I did, even with some of the problems that it has. And I also hope that you guys liked my review. If you did, come back next weekend to hear me talk about an episode of Batman the Animated Series. And the weekend after that, I'll be talking about another episode of Batman Beyond. And throughout the week, I'm known to do videos on various other things, so be sure to check out those as well. And if you did like this video, be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe. Until next time, I'll see you guys later. Have a great rest of the day.